In the blue humanities, we can observe a sense of two forms of water, what Myra E. Wright calls opposite conditions of wetness. It's this latter body of water, standing still, saturated, repugnant, that I wish to navigate. This paper attempts two manoeuvres. First, I aim to focus on inland bodies of water, water that is in some way medically, morally, or magically judged bad. Second, I examine these bodies of water through a place-conscious or place-responsive approach. That is, in analysing Shakespeare's bad waters, I'm doing so in the context of my own contemporary bad waters. The title for this paper comes from the English translation of Weereewa, the Ngunnawal word for Lake George, located north of Canberra in Australia. Weereewa means bad water, which perhaps refers to its high salt content. It may also refer to an association with bad spirits. In the neighbouring Wiradjuri language, Weereewa can also mean danger. This, Rowan Conroy suggests, refers to the dangers of venturing onto the lake, something documented by European settlers with multiple fatalities recorded in the 19th and 20th centuries. These have added to the lake's mysterious reputation, a reputation compounded by its transience. The levels of the lake can evaporate rapidly due to its shallowness. In dry periods, the lake bed is home to grazing sheep. In wet periods, it looks like the ocean. In my lifetime, it's oscillated from oceanic to empty. J. Arthur notes that these changes in water level in Lake George have caught the settler imagination. The lake offers a starting point to consider how inland bodies of water are characterized by human perspective, attributed with values and qualities like bad, dangerous, mysterious, unpredictable, that circulate around how the water is conceptualized in relationship to human, here predominantly white settler populations. In what follows, I'm going to examine two pools, one in the Tempest, one in King Lear, both of which are bad. When Ariel describes where he left Caliban, Stefano, and Trinculo, he tells Prospero, "At last I left them in the filthy-mantled pool beyond your cell, there dancing up to the chins, that the foul lake o'erstunk their feet." Here the body of water is both pool and lake, and by filthy-mantled, Vaughan and Vaughan gloss this as covered with slime or scum. The smell of the lake is compared with the smell of the conspirators' feet. Either it stank worse than or drowned the stench of their feet. In either case, there is an olfactory link between human body and body of water. The bodies of the conspirators appear to merge with the foulness of the lake. It becomes almost syntactically unclear who smells worse, the bodies or the water. We're reminded of the stench a few lines later, when after entering all wet, Trinculo says, "Monster, I do smell all horse piss, at which my nose is in great indignation." In aligning the water quality with the qualities of the characters, there's a sense of compatibility implied here, that as untrustworthy conspirators, they're in their natural element, up to their chins in slime. Lal Duckett argues that in this moment, there is a human-animal elemental commingling happening. Lynn Tribble also recognises a meshing of human and animal in descriptions of swimming. Swimming here becomes dancing, but this is a mocking analogy, that the conspirators' bodies are out of their depth, as Ariel reads their flailing, possibly drowning, as dancing. As Steve Mentz describes, swimming is only a semi-natural practice for terrestrial humans. At our best, we engage the water slowly, awkwardly, and at considerable personal risk. In this scene, there's a mismatch between human activity and watery context. There's also a contrast between the concept of dancing, civilized, organized, measured, and the foulness, the smelliness of the lake. But why is the water so filthy? To consider this question, I'd like to make a spatial and temporal leap and examine an Australian inland body of water local to me, Lake Burley Griffin in Canberra. Artificially constructed in the 1960s, the lake dams the Molonglo River, and today it has ongoing water quality issues, often pertaining to algal blooms. The National Capital Authority's water quality program monitors levels of blue-green algae or cyanobacteria, especially during the recreational season. The NCA state that sampling for primary contact recreation, swimming, is intended for submersion of the whole human body. Tolerance levels for exposure to declining water quality are calibrated to the average human body's size and weight. Blue-green algae are a type of bacteria, and in low levels they're a normal part of watery ecosystems. But when an algal bloom occurs, this can prove toxic to humans and animals. Bloom is the term used to describe an accumulation of algal cells to a point where they discolor the water, form scums, produce unpleasant tastes, odors, and reduce water quality. Now, of interest to me here is that certain types of blue-green algae can release chemicals that produce a strong odour during blooms. Cyanobacteria, or blue-green algae, I should add, is not unique to Canberra's water systems or even to Australia. It's very much present in the UK, as you can see from this recent map tracking reportings of blue-green algae in the past year. Cyanobacteria are also not new. They originated around 3 billion years ago. So in the Tempest then, the filthy-mantled pool or foul lake appears to be undergoing something akin to a smelly blue-green algal bloom. And we see this elsewhere in the corpus. In their eco tables in Shakespeare Ecology and Adaptation, Elise DeRoy and Paul Prescott identify algae in King Lear. When Gloucester asks Edgar, disguised as poor Tom, "What are you there? Your names?" Edgar responds that poor Tom drinks the green mantle of the standing pool. Mantle is defined in the OED as algae. Unlike the Tempest, Edgar is not submerged but has ingested the scum sitting atop the water's surface. So, while identifying blue-green algal blooms in these two examples from Shakespeare may not be particularly astonishing as a finding, it allows us to do some more thinking about the environmental conditions of these bodies of water, about the relationships between humans and animals, humans and water in the plays, and about the continuities of experience in terms of water-human relations from Shakespeare's era to today. Like many things, algal blooms worsen with climate change. In both of these plays, the characters that interact with toxic bodies of water are on the periphery of the play-world society. For Stefano, Trinculo and Caliban, bad water is presumably to be viewed as a justified comeuppance, as the visual external cue of their inner qualities, both punishment of and indicator of their innate badness. For Edgar, it's used imaginatively and performatively as a cue to his listeners that there is something wrong with poor Tom. Critics have read these two interactions with algae blooming pools in the Tempest and Lear as indicative of bad water as a kind of controlling mechanism for problematic characters, or as a public health crisis. Characters are neutralized, disciplined, or deprived by bad water. These are all deficit models, where water is a method of punishment, control, discipline, or when withheld, of thirst. In this way, not only is water bad in terms of being toxic, but it's also mobilized as a way of punishing bad people or creating mad people through hunger. It's important to remember that Edgar's or poor Tom's dialogue here is in response to this question. What are you there? If we centre our thinking on bad water around Gloucester's question, what are you there, then we may be able to understand and complicate our entanglements with bad water and begin to unpack the ways in which we label, interpret and interact with waters that are bad or disgusting. We can turn this question of what are you there towards the pools themselves. Redirecting this question disconnects the pools from being meaningful solely in terms of their proximity to or use by humans. We can instead ask, what has caused an algal bloom at this time, in this place? Why does the pool so close to Prospero's abode come to be filthy? Why is poor Tom's pool covered in algae? Why are both pools understood to be dressed in a mantle? The implication perhaps being that they are taking on a role, a state of being, that is not inherent to them. Shakespeare is attributing a human-centric metaphor of dress here, which suggests that this nature of badness is transient, that the pools may be wearing, in the language of Macbeth, borrowed robes. Like the waters of Lake Weereewa, the pools of Tempest and Lear are not in a constant state, but rather we are encountering them in one temporary state of badness. This might enable us to reconceptualize our approach to bad waters and to the characters who engage with them. If we turn back to Lake Weereewa, we see a similar pattern of transient badness, and when the lake refills, it becomes a swimming soup of algae, of animals and plants, and a functioning ecosystem. For Duckett, Shakespeare's Tempest offers a model whereby we can recalibrate bad waters. We can follow Duckett in attempting to dismantle the code of filthy here by recalibrating such pools as potential swimming soups of life. Today, I've attempted to consider how we read such entanglement when it comes to bad waters. Typically, it seems humans appear entangled with this form of water as a tool for punishment, exclusion, discipline, control, or as a mirror of our own inherent badness. I've begun to query how we might push against or read alternative modes of engagement and entanglement with bad water. I've also tried to show how in my own emplacement I am entangled with problematic bodies of water which seep into my reading of the bad waters of the plays. Focusing on the ugly phenomena of our inland waters enable an interrogation of in early modern environments and modern Australian engagements with local bodies of water. In recognizing manifestations of water that are not productive or beneficial for humans because they're salty, dirty, stagnant, or just ugly, we can perhaps take a baby step away from anthropocentric readings of water in Shakespeare's works and in our own entanglements. Thank you.